All right, welcome back. You're watching the Perspective101 series. We're into three-point perspective, and right now we are picking up on Part 2 from our previous lesson where we discussed the basics of setting up a three-point perspective construct or system so that we can find our cone of vision. Mainly that was the whole idea of the last lesson, was to just basically understand the system in its simplest form, the basic requirements of the system, and then finding the cone of vision, which requires the station point. And you'll understand what I'm talking about in a second, because we are going to sketch based on the space that you see up here at the top. So I have a floor plan and an elevation in a kitchen, and I want to throw a couple cameras in here and see what I can come up with. Now, in three-point perspective, we are looking up or down, so I need to decide a few things, and then we can start picking the construct that we want. Now, we need to know whether we're looking up or down. We need to know the height of the eye. So we need to know how high up off the ground we are. So if we're a normal dude like this, so I'm 6'2", and this guy is roughly 6'2", little icon of a character. I need to know if I'm looking through this character's eyes, or I'm looking through maybe a child's eyes, looking up at something. So let's say we have a little kid, and the little kid is looking up at the refrigerator at a drawing that his mom had just put on the front of this refrigerator, and the little child is excited. We could also have maybe a child just about to get in his chair, looking up and seeing the cereal and the bowl and everything there waiting for him. Or maybe we could walk in as this character, and we could be looking, maybe we could be looking at the refrigerator with the refrigerator door open. You know, I'm not sure what it is that we're going to do, but I sort of like the idea of the child looking up at the refrigerator. So if we're going to be doing a child's view, we might want the view to be a little bit more wide angle, which means that the canvas might peek out of the cone of vision a little bit, and we'll start to see distortion here, but that will add to the height. We also might want, we're going to be using, we're going to have a lower horizon, which means that most of our scene is going to be up. So a child is normally looking up at the world, whereas a parent or someone who's much taller is looking down at the world. If we were in a helicopter, we would be looking down, or an airplane. If we were a mouse, we would be looking up, right? So we'd be using this one here. So let's go ahead and let's call out a few things. Let's say right now we're going to do 2 sketches as a child. And we're going to do 2 sketches as an adult. Let's say the child's eye level is maybe 3 feet off the ground, and the adult's eye level will be 6 foot off the ground. Okay. So let's figure out what exactly we're going to be doing. Maybe this character walks in and sort of sees the mess of dishes laying in the sink. Maybe there's just a lot of dishes, and there's pans, and maybe there's a trash bag in the corner. Maybe it's just a giant mess, Or maybe he's right here looking in this direction, looking down at the table just slightly. And the refrigerator door is open and we can see some of the contents of the refrigerator, and we see all this stuff on the kitchen table. Maybe he's in the corner so that we can have a more shallow angle to his vision, right? So I need to decide which way he's facing. Maybe he's looking here, and we need to make sure that, maybe this is, so we got 60-degree cone of vision here, we've got 60 degrees, that if we do open the refrigerator, it's going to be more of a foreground element. And if I go from the eye to this object, I need to make sure that I'm receiving information that the refrigerator door is not blocking. So if I know that this is the center of vision, then I know that anything that's to the character's left is going to be to his left, and anything to the right is going to be to his right. And we have to know also where the canvas is going to be placed. So if the canvas is going to be placed more on the right and less on the left, then that means that the canvas is going to be more over here, and it's going to go beyond his cone of vision, and it'll be just slightly on the left, so we won't even see the refrigerator door at this rate, right? So I think our canvas is probably going to be downward a little bit. So we're looking down on the scene, so maybe we're seeing a little bit more of the top from the center of vision. We're seeing a little bit more upward from the center of vision, a little less down, a little bit more to the left. So now what we have is, if this is the center of vision, it doesn't matter where we're at on this line. I know that the canvas is touching the cone of vision somewhere. So probably right here, because this is the edge here. This is what we're looking at here. These two things, the edge of the cone of vision and the edge of this line right here, it's the same line. So that means that the canvas is a little bit away from the side of the cone of vision, and it's a little bit past the center of vision here, or the center line. So we have 1, 2, 1, 2.5. So we have 1 on one side. So 1 to 1, 2.5. So that's about the right proportions. And the way that we can tell what's going to be on the canvas is just by drawing a line from the edge of the canvas here to the eye. And then we'll see, yes, we're seeing a little bit of the refrigerator. The bowl is going to be right in the center. The chair is going to take up that space right there. This side of the chair is going to take up a little bit of that. Some of the mill is going to take up that part of the canvas. Now this'll make a little bit more sense once I start drawing. So let's just say I'm looking down and I'm seeing a little bit of the fridge door in here, right? I'm just going to quickly jot this down here as sort of an icon. And then the front corner of the table is on the right side of the canvas, maybe right there. And the back edge is a little bit to the left of that. So that means that the front of the kitchen table is right here. And the back is going back in space in that direction. And we're seeing the food right here, right there. And then we're seeing a chair right about here. And we're also seeing a chair in the front right there. Okay, so I don't really like that angle, but this is a good starting point, right? I also need to know, here, I'll leave that there and then I'll make another sketch, because we shouldn't be, I don't want to work on those triangles anymore. So we're going to work on our own triangle. So we're going to add a horizon line, the top horizon line. I'll just make it blue. And since we're looking down on this one, We'll put that at the top. I'll make it just a little bit thicker so everybody could see it. Okay. And then our left and right horizon, we'll just make those purple. Now, since I'm going to be looking down very shallow, this is what I was talking about in the last lesson. The further down our vanishing point, the closer to the horizon we are looking. So if I got, let's say, dude here, right? It's a little dude just chilling. And I'm looking forward. If I'm looking forward, that means that I'm looking at the horizon line. If I'm looking downward, that means that my Z, any object that I have, is going to be falling away from me, right? So it's going to be at a further angle. At this particular angle, we're at 90 degrees. This one is a little bit more, right? So 90 degrees would be right here, but this has just a little bit more. And because of that, we're going to be getting our horizon line, or sorry, our vertical vanishing point is going to be much further away than if we were looking down at a sharp angle like this. And this will make a little bit more sense in a second once I put all this stuff together. All right. So let's just say that, I have this shallow angle here. Shallow just meaning if this is 90 degrees, I have a shallow angle away from the side here. Otherwise, I would have a steeper angle, right? So I would have more of a distance. There would be more steepness to that angle. So I'm going to make the left side a little bit more shallow, and we'll make the right side a little bit more steep. And what this is going to do is create a very particular center of vision, which we have to visit right now in order to make sure that you guys know what's happening here. Actually create another one of these. 10px. Nope, don't want the color. All right. So we're just going to start with my Z because we know where that point ends. So we're going to start at Z, and we're going to work our way up to the horizon line. I always start with Z because it's the easiest one to create a 90-degree point from. So we have Z and we have C. You remember our first construct? That's how that works. So let me see here. All right, so moving on to the next one. So this one is going to be Z. I'll just make sure I label that correctly so that we always have Z, and I'm always on the Z layer for the Z. And then we'll make this one X. So what I'm going to do with X is I'm just going to create a really long line and then a short one. And then I will hit Control T for transform, and I'll rotate it. And I'll make sure that this shorter line is aligned. Oh, that was very synchronous. All right, so it's aligned with the right horizon. And then I'll slide this around so that it meets at X. So the longer line meets at X, and the shorter line is flush with the opposite horizon. And I'll just hit Enter on that, and then we will erase out all this other stuff here that we don't need. I like to keep my 3-point perspective constructs quite clean. And I like to label everything. So this is X and this is A. So we'll do the same thing with Y. Label this Y so I know to go back on there, on that layer. So I'm going to do this again, a long line with a shorter line. I know that it's 90 degrees. That's all I really need. I'm going to put this in the corner and rotate it. So that it's flush. Actually, you know what? Let's do this a different way because I want to show you what happens if I already have my center here, which I've already got 2 lines. This gave me my center of vision. That no matter what, if I go from the third point through the center of vision to the opposite line, then we've already got our reference line that's accurate. So this is now 90 degree no matter what. That's just sort of the way it works. So this is Y and this is B. So it's important to know that those things line up and that they all meet in the center right here. And this point right here is our center of vision. This is where we're going to start creating our cone of vision. So normally, instead of X, I like to use Z. So Z half kite. So I want to create my half kite for Z. Z I'm using as red. And since I didn't show this to you last time, the distance line always goes from the center of vision. And it's 90 degree or perpendicular from its associated reference line. So in this particular case, we're on Z, and I'm going to the right-hand side. I could have went to the left. With Z, that's the only one that you can go left or right, whereas with X and Y, I can only make the half kite down if I'm looking down or up if I'm looking up. So just want to make sure that that's clear. And now we're going to do our half kite. So we're going to make an L shape. And before I move on, I just want to clarify that this is our Z reference line. This is our center of vision. And this is our distance line. And somewhere along here, we need to find our station point in order for this to work. And the way that we do that is by putting hitting Control T, putting that rotation, snapping it to the corner so that the center rotator gizmo is actually on the end. And we're going to put it along this line here, along the distance line. And then I'm going to see how far away my left line is from Z and my right line is from C, and I'll split the difference. So if C would line up and Z is way off, then I need to move it backwards about half the distance between where it would line up with Z and where it would be fully away from C, right? So I'm going to split the difference here, and then I'm going to move this little point along the distance line towards Z and C while having that point still line up. Think about this as like a slide, and there's a groove that this thing is stuck to along the distance line. It has to be there. So now we've got Z, which is stuck to the left line along this L shape, 90 degree L shape from the eye. And now I've got C lined up to the right line, and I want to split the difference between the two and then slide this little anchor point here forward. So I'm just trying to split the difference until both of them line up with both C and Z, as well as the anchor point on the distance line. So right now it looks like C and Z have been met, and the anchor point is in fact on the distance line. So we have our half kite which triangulated our distance, or I mean our station point, which is what we wanted because we needed that distance line. We needed to know how far away the station point was. And it looks like the station point is this far away from the center of vision. Zoom in here a little bit more. All right, so this is it. We needed this distance in order for us to calculate the cone of vision. We need that distance. We need to know how far away the station point is from our center point. Now, a note is that this half kite could have been on the other side, which it's actually kind of cleaner on the other side. So when we start calculating our measure points, I'll tell you why that is important. But for now, we'll just keep it. We'll just keep it like this. So we got our half kite. We know where our station point is. So we have our station point. And our distance line goes over here. And then we'll remove CV because that is where everything originates. So we need to make sure that we're keeping things kosher. All right. I'm also going to shrink some of these down so that we can see them from a distance and identify them really quickly without having them get in the way of our drawing. All right. So notice how far or how close the center of vision is to the horizon line compared to our other constructs here. So these systems, the center of vision is much more equidistant between the Z and the C, right? But this one, the center of vision is much closer to C than it is to Z. So the further away you put Z, the closer to C your center of vision will be. And what that looks like is this. If I'm looking so the further Z is up, the further it is up. So the more the triangle is stretched, the lower or the more shallow from the horizon we are viewing the world from. The closer Z is to the horizon, the more we're looking upward into the sky. All right, so what is this? This is all right. I hope this is all making sense. It's a little difficult to explain all this stuff, but hopefully this will give you enough to where you can start working on your own projects in 3-point. Now this is just the beginning. This gets so much more complex, but we're going to wait for the complexity until we're done with the drawing. So right now, we're just worried about the true horizon. We're just worried about the left and right horizon. We're worried about the X, Y, and Z vanishing points. We're worried about the station point and the center of vision so that we can find the cone of vision. So we need the cone of vision in order to know where we can draw and still have accurate perspective based on this particular construct. So here we go. I'm going to create a shape here. And then we're going to create a cone of vision. So basically I'm going from the cone of vision halfway to the station point. The center of vision halfway to the station point, okay? So center of vision halfway to the station point. So this distance to that distance seems to be half. You have to go from center of vision to that halfway point in order to get something that is around 60 degrees. Now this isn't 100% accurate. This is actually less than 60 degrees. A little bit more and it would have been 60 degrees. But I find that this works just as well, and it's good for quickly sketching using this sort of construct. Now what's great about what we just did is once we create one of these, we can then copy this and flip it and rotate it. Obviously the letters don't quite work, but now we've got two different constructs. One is both of these are looking down. This one is looking into the left of the objects. This one is looking into the right of objects. Then we can take these two and we can flip them vertically. And then now these two will be looking upward. Try to fit them in here. I'll go through and flip all the letters so that you guys can see what's going on. Now I just created 4 different views by simply taking what I already made and flipping them. Now for sketching, this is quick and it's fun, but what I would have rather have done was created all the measure points for this first construct, then move it around, because then it becomes much easier later to get all this stuff done. I would have also created the 2 other distance lines. I would have created the true height line and the measure bar before I would have copied them. You'll see in a quick minute just how crazy this is going to get. So let's just flip these so that we can tell what's going on. Sorry about this. This is a little dry. You can fast forward past this part. I just want to make sure that we are clear on what is happening. So another difference is that now X is on the right. So this is now X, right? Oops. So we now have X and A, which are in different positions. So when you do this, you have to be aware that you're switching everything on yourself. So Y is also, it's flipped. So Y and B become something different in a different location, but the construct still works. And then Z also. Okay. So for the other ones, I will just turn off the labels. Actually, I can't. Oh, well, we'll just leave it like that, and then I'll start sketching with inside these different constructs based on what we were just talking about. So remember, we have a child where we're looking. Wait, where did I put that? There we go. So we have a child that we're looking at having 3 units high eye level. So that means that if I'm looking upward, if I'm looking at all upward and my eye height is 3 units high, that means that my vision is going to be quite a bit higher than 3 units. So if I was to create a tiny character over here in this corner, a little dude, so let's say little baby that's looking upward with a 60-degree cone of vision, and the canvas being right here, right, so not the full height of the cone of vision, then that means that I'm only going to be seeing within this space right here. I will not be seeing any of this or any of this. So my eye level being, well, this is at 2 units, I guess. Let me scale that up so that the little kid's at 3. So this is 3 units high. This little guy is looking up at the dishes. Now, another caveat is I probably don't want the character's eye right at the table, maybe a little bit below, so that we're looking under the table a little bit instead of right at it. It'll stop tangents from happening. But anyway, from the eye, we're seeing still, I have to get a little bit closer now in order to see this as a foreground object. So for part of the table to be in view on the bottom part, I need to be closer to the object here. But see where my distance is, where my picture plane is, and how tall I am? I'm not actually seeing 3 units. I'm not seeing anything that's at 3 units because everything is above, everything that's in view is above 3 units. I could do the same thing on the other side. So if my eye is at 3 units, I need to be really close in order to see things at 3 units high. Well, it depends also on the angle that I'm looking to. So if my view is a little more shallow, so let's take this, which is what's happening here. I have a more shallow view with this perspective construct. So my view is probably shallow like this. Then I can probably see a little bit more into the space. So if this is my canvas, I'm seeing the chair, a little bit of the table, maybe the cereal box, maybe a bowl, what have you. So with that said, I'm going to just start thinking about where this character is in the space and start developing my pictures. So let's start in 1. This one's looking down, so I'm the papa. And maybe I'm looking, maybe the sink. So if this is where the canvas is, right, the center of vision's right here. So that means that that objects are going to be like this. Right, so anything that's going back into the left is going to go to X. Anything that's going back into the right is going to go to Y. And anything that's going downward is going to go to Z. So let's say here is my sink. What else do I see? So I'd probably see the windowsill. So that's also going down to Z whenever you're going vertical. Anytime you're going off and to the right, you go to Y. Anytime we're going back in space, so in this particular case, we got some thickness in the windowsill. What else? So I'm looking at this map up here, and I'm trying to ask myself what would be in the space. So I'd probably have, if my kitchen sink is that wide, and I know that my window right here starts a little bit higher, so we have this little bit of height here, right? And I know that it's 2 feet deep, so I'm going to assume that this is 2 feet, and that this is, it looks like 2.5 feet wide. So if that's 2 feet deep, which is going to be more foreshortened because it's going back at a steeper angle, this is going to be less foreshortened. I could say that this is 2.5 feet to 2 feet, right? That's fine. I could do that. And then this is 3.5 feet high. So whatever that distance is, I'll just flip that down. If that's 2 feet, 2.5 feet, then maybe this is where the bottom of the counters are. So I'm estimating all this stuff, and I'm always thinking about going back to my vanishing points off and to the right. And then it looks like I have a cabinet that's a half a unit to the right. So it'll probably start right about there. And it's a little bit higher than the side of the window. So it probably starts at right where the window's open right there. So probably won't see that at all in this view. And maybe that's an issue, right? If I don't see that, maybe I want to see that. And then right below that, it looks like below that and to the right. So if I go directly below and then I go to the right, then this is where my stove is. So I'm not going to see the stove at all. I'm just going to see the side. And then if I look to the left of this, we might see a unit over here, and then there's a cabinet up here that we won't see. But what's important is that there's another cabinet part out here, and if I go back to X, yeah, see, it's not going to work. That's coming out over here, going down there. This is continuing out here, going down to Z, and then this is popping out. We're starting to get a lot of distortion. So it's going back there. So I'm still going to my vanishing points, trying to sort of rectify the space, trying to find where the space ends and begins. And then also down here, so this is going back up to the X, this one's going over to Y. Now remember, we're way outside over here. We're way outside of the cone of vision, and notice how all of this is super distorted, right? So if we move upward right about here and we draw that over, this is where the cabinet starts up at the top, comes forward about 1/2 inch, then it goes in a little bit. So I'm going back to Y right now, and then I'm going over to X. So let's find out. So it's probably half of the width. So here we go. It's a little bit more than half of the width of the counter. We have this little top area here, and then find out where that meets along the wall. It meets right about there. So I'm just triangulating all this stuff and then seeing how it all works, just sketching it all together. And the further away I go, the more distortion I see. So this is getting really super crazy, which I don't want. So this is crazy. Watch, you'll see right when we get to the horizon line and above, we got Y over here, right? So Y is still over there for anything that's going back in this direction, and then Z is anything that's going down below, and then X is anything that's coming forward at us. And this is where it starts to get a little bit of a crazy, because now X and Y along this area here are almost exactly the same angle. So it's super distorted, super crazy. Let's go halfway. That's where that one would be. And then if I draw that over, let me go back to X, that'll move out, go over to Y. So I'm continuing to draw outside of the cone of vision only to illustrate that, we have this space that we're trying to measure here. And the further out we get, the more distorted, the more shallow the space will get. So we got all these cabinets. And then, what is that? So right about here would be the end of that space, and then it would start to move forward. So we'll go to X, come forward, go to X, come forward here, and we're still going back down to Z. So the refrigerator would be like right here. Y is going back there, X is still going out in that direction. And then we've got our fridge way over here, which is coming out at about that angle here, because we're going back to X, and then I'm going back to Z with the height of the fridge. And then we're going back to Y for the depth of the fridge. Or sorry, going back to Y. And then we've got the refrigerator top, which is probably, maybe that high. So now X and Y are again almost the same angle. So this is how we're starting to get things that are way overly distorted. So this one right here needs to be reworked because it's not following correct perspective. There. This is much closer to us, and we're getting a lot more distortion. So this is, you could tell like the space here is being stretched out. We're getting more linear space here, more linear distortion over here. And the closer we get to center, the more normal the perspective is, the more standard it looks. Yeah, see, even then, I still need to correct this. All right. So now Y and X are sort of competing for attention, and it's making it really difficult to get this right. But my overall goal for showing you guys this is that most people will do this, what I'm doing right now, and they'll be like, why? What's going on? Why is everything all messed up? Why is everything so stretched? Why is it not working? It's not working because you're not inside the cone of vision. So basically what's going to happen is if I want to zoom in on this, I still need to create my holodeck. I still need to build out the whole space. So that means all of this out here will still need to be developed. So this is my that dining room table. So I'm eyeballing this right now because I don't have my holodeck. But essentially, I would never draw all this stuff out here because none of it would be used unless it was for a very, very special case. Very, very special case scenario. Again, I'm using 3 vanishing points, and I'm trying to stay as consistent as I can, going back to their associated vanishing point. To see if I can find something that I like. Alright, so this chair's top will be here. I'm triangulating too, everything. I'm triangulating everything that I see. Alright, and then just this last one over here. It's much easier to do this once you become aware of all of the subtle nuances of perspective. This is so much easier once you know exactly what's happening here. So like this one, there's a door that's right here, and I'm sort of arcing my lines because of how distorted they are right here, but essentially I would be in the corner of this building. Forgot to add this here. So the refrigerator's a little off. It's getting super distorted over here. Let's just say that the top of the building is right here for now, because it'll make it much easier for us. I will not be able to do this, right? So Y is going back in this direction, right? So Y is over here. If Y is going back in that direction and we find the floor is right here, this actually, I would need to push the table a little bit closer over here, so maybe we can add another chair or two. So I'm going to Z, now I'm going to Y. Going back down to Z, do the same thing. Going to Z, heading back to Y, going to X on the sides here, going down to Z. And then this is the back corner of our wall. It's going from Y out this way. And then this is the upper edge of our wall. Let's just say it ends there. So this is to Z. This is to X over here. And this is to Y on that side. And then we have that door that is over here. And then it's going to go over here to Y like that. So this has its place, right? If we see this, this is this room estimated, totally estimated with a wide angle lens. But really all I wanted was this area here. So you need to know that when you zoom in on an area in 3-point, you still need to draw the holodeck for all of this while you're studying. But in the final, like once you get really good at this and you learn the nuances of zooming in on a space, you don't need to do that. But in order to do that, knowing that my center of vision is right here, so my center of vision is right here, I need to calculate how many units back until I hit the wall, how many units down until I hit that sink, right? So what I do is I calculate this little triangle of space from my sketch, and I ask myself on the height line, how high is that, right? So if that is 3.5 or 4 feet, right? So to the top or the bottom of the window, we have 4 foot and a half. So 4.5 feet. So that means that if I calculate from the window sill down to the ground and then back to the true height line, then I know that I'm 4.5 foot from the ground. And then I know that this unit right here, this unit is 1 unit down, or a half a unit actually. Looks like, yeah, it's a whole unit down. So I know that that's a whole unit down. And then if I know that that's a unit, I can begin to start gauging my scale for my holodeck. Once I have one unit, I can start to add my measure bar and my true height line based on that one unit. Because all I have to do is project from my measure point that unit from the center line up to the true height line on the Z, and then now I can just duplicate that unit all over the place and then project that down onto the space, and then I can begin building into the space itself. All right, so I'm going to continue sketching here. I'm going to mask off the rest of this so that we don't see it. And I'll continue sketching in these areas over here. So this one, notice how we're on the left-hand side. So we're on the left-hand side of the triangle. The center of vision is on the left. It's leaning to the left and top. So we're looking very shallowly into the space. So if I'm at 6'2", I'm looking down very shallow. If I brought this Z up closer here, I would be looking more down. And the further away Z is, so let's say I brought it further down, the more shallow I would be looking into the space. The more to the left I am, the more to the left I'm looking. So the more I want to look at an object where it's closer on the left and further on the right. And the more to the right over here I'm looking, the more I will be looking to the right, and the more I want to position this side to the right and then let the rest fall off to the left. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's look at the table. Let's say I'm looking over to the left here, and this is my center of vision, and I want my canvas a little bit to the left but more to the right. What I'll do is I'll start positioning this stuff conceptually. So if the front corner is more to the right, so to his right, this is his right, this is his left, then that means if we're looking through his eye, this would be to the right and that would be to the left. So if on his left we see from the eye the corner of that table is more towards the right, then that means that that this side is the front side and the other side, Y, is over here on this side. So the table is over here. So let's position this behind. So I'm going to position the table behind the center of vision. So center vision, I don't want it to be actually on the table. No, you know what? Let's bring it forward a little bit. Let's bring the table forward in front of the center vision. So right now we know that it's in front of the center vision because it's passing the left reference line and it's passing the right reference line. But it is, so far it's flush to the Z, where Z meets the center, right? So the height right here meets the center of vision right there. But let's say I wanted it to be below, right? If I wanted this to be below the canvas, or below where the center of vision is, then I would start here. I would go from how many ever units over and down I want, and then forward. And then I would go how many units in front, and then down. And then I would start going to my X and my Y that way. So let's say, let's do that. Let's say that my table is below my eye, because it is. If we think about it, it's 3 feet below the eye, or 2.5 feet below the eye. So let's decide what our units are. Let's say that, you know, units stretch as they come forward in space. So let's just approximate that. And they get compressed as they go back in space. So they get less and less distance as they go back in space. Same right here. Going up, 1 unit would be, it would be stretched as it goes up, and it would compress as it goes down. So let's just do that. Let's compress it slightly. So we're saying that this is almost 3 units down. And if this is 3 units down on the Z, and that's where we want it, and we want it maybe 2 units forward. Let's go 2 units forward and down. So now if we go from X at 3 units down, and we go from X over, right, we've got 2 units forward, we're going down to Z, and then where they meet, this is 2 units over and 3 units down. Let's do the same thing here. Let's do 2 units forward, and then we'll go down to Z from there. And then we will go back from Y. We'll go through this point down here since we already triangulated it, and forward. And now we've got 2 units forward, 3 units down. And now that we know that those 2 points exist, let's keep that point there so we know that that's 2 units down. But now that we know that these points right here meet 2 units forward and 2 units forward, 2 units forward here, and 3 units up or down, right? So 3 units down, 3 units down. Then I know what's going on. I know that from X, if I go through that point right here, so through that point, and if I go from Y and I go through that point, I know that this is the front of my table. And I have, let's see here, we've got a 3 unit table. So that means that the table ends right here. And then it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deep. So if this is 2, then we'll foreshorten the units imaginatively. And this is 3 more units deep. So we'll go up to X. We'll go back down to Y and back here. And then now we know that this tabletop right here is 5 deep, 3 deep, 5 wide on all sides, right? So we got 5 wide there, 5 wide there, we got 3 deep there, 3 deep there. So these are just guesstimates, man. All I'm doing is I'm guesstimating. I am totally guessing and estimating this stuff based on knowing that the center point is 0, 0. So if the center point is 0, 0 and I need to foreshorten downward, I need to foreshorten to the left and foreshorten to the right, then I'll do that. And since I know that coming forward in space, 1 unit will stretch out, then that means that these spaces will just exponentially stretch out. And if I know going back in space they compress, then I can estimate that they're going to compress. Same thing here. They're going to expand, and then they're going to compress. As they go back, they're going to expand, and they're going to compress. Right? Because I know those things exist, it's easier for me to pinpoint what it is that I want to do here. All right, so now we've got, I'm looking at the table. This is up against the wall, so let's just say that there's a picture frame here on the wall, and we're seeing this seat right here, and then we have this seat right here. And I'm just going, again, I'm going to Z when I'm going downward. I'm going to X when I'm going off to the right, and Y when I'm going off to the left in this particular case. So if he's looking right here, that means that I created like some parts here, like as if a father was creating a model of some sort. Papa's creating a model there. And on the other side, Mama has a plate of good food. And then maybe, I didn't add this in the picture, but maybe there's a plant right there. And then Son has bowl of Cheerios with box just chilling on table, right? And then over here, right behind, is the door that leads out into the living room. And I don't know what is in there, but let's say there's like a couch or something back there. I don't know. We'd have to calculate all that stuff back there. But we have this sort of open space right there. Now, if I wanted to, I might say, well, this piece is all about, it's all about the father playing with his models. And I don't mind having a little bit of a wide angle down here. I don't mind that. So my frame is going outside of the canvas. Now what I would do here is I would then, knowing that that is so far outside of the canvas, I will reorient my table so that I can focus, so that the center of vision, so that the center of my focus is on the models. So I want the table to be at the height right here, and I want all those model pieces to be there. I want, you know, the kid's cereal to be right here. Bowl, plant, picture on the wall that's being hidden by the plant. And then mama's seat over here. And daddy's seat over here. Table legs. Seats going underneath here. Remember, I'm going to Z with all these things that are going downward. I have to keep reminding myself all this stuff as well. So now we could put mama here and daddy here if we wanted. But let's frame this now that we have a sort of sketch that we want. Let's frame it how we want. So perhaps we still want to do that vertical canvas. We're welcome to do that. And now, you know, we've got like all this interesting stuff going on down here. We've got all these angles going outward, and then we've got this plant sort of bringing us back in, and then we can have an image over here, the painting bringing us in this direction. Our seat is coming in and bringing us in this direction. So compositionally, I think as long as our eye stays within inside the image, so let's say we've got another little piece there so that our eye can come in, focus right here. So this is where I want the focus. And then when it goes up, the plant's going to bring it back. Or if it does make it up here, maybe there's a design in the image that goes across that brings it back down and then brings the eye back into the piece. So I like that. So we got two daddy images. Daddy walked in, saw a bunch of crud in the, in the sink. Doesn't like it. Good narrative. And then over here, mommy doesn't like the fact that he's playing at the table. So daddy is sitting here playing models. And maybe they're arguing or something. I don't know. Just throwing some story in there without actually putting the human. Now let's go for baby. Baby's looking up. I hope you could already see the benefit of what's happening here. Which one is this one? Yep, there we go. Right, so let's see. Maybe baby is walking in from this side. So he's walking in from this side and he's looking up at daddy. No, because we can't add a character there. Maybe he's over here and he's looking up at the refrigerator. Yeah, let's do that one. So he's looking up at the refrigerator and he's on the left-hand side of it. So he's seeing the left-hand side of it here. And he's seeing the front, and then he'll probably see out that door on the right-hand side. So if we say that the fridge top is right there, proportionately, I need to make sure that the fridge exists at the right proportion. So proportionately, width to height ratio, so the depth to the width is probably around the same. And then we have more cabinetry coming out of the side there. Because I planned this, much like hopefully you guys did, you guys know what's happening in your image, and you can appropriately respond to that. So the refrigerator, it's going to have 3 feet below. Hold on. So we've got the refrigerator is probably up to about right here in the other side view. And it goes out. So let's say it's 7 feet tall. It's about the size of the refrigerator. I mean, about the size of the door. Actually, as a matter of fact, we need to be able to get the refrigerator inside the door. So most likely it's a little bit smaller, maybe 2 feet, 2.25 deep by almost 6.5 high. No, maybe it's 6 because I could actually see on top of the refrigerator. So maybe it's like that. Yeah, we'll do that. So that means all this is wrong. Gotta do that again. The reason why I know that is because if the horizon is 3 feet high, that means that we have at least 3 feet below. And then we have at least 3 feet above. So there's the refrigerator. Maybe he's looking for the cereal boxes on top of the refrigerator, right? Maybe there's something on top of the fridge that he wants. So I'm just taking these points, I'm making some geometric shapes, and I'm lining these points up as best I can in a sketch. So it looks like right about here is the countertop. Countertop's right about there. And then top of building is right there. Corner is right there, and then bottom is right there, which means that the door is right about here. And it's about a little bit bigger than the refrigerator, a little bit wider. So now I've got all this stuff to work with. All kinds of stuff. This is where the table would start, you know, like if we were looking under the table, this is where the table would start. And then our, you know, our chairs. Anyway. So now we've got this little area here, this little nook that we have available to us now. Now we got to decide how far back it is to the refrigerator and how far down, right? So if this is 3 feet high, that means that that the eye height might be, so if that's 3 foot, and we know that it expands going down, maybe the fridge would be a little bit lower here. Yeah, so if that's 3 foot, then that's 3 foot going up. Yeah, all right. So now I'm doing some logical guesswork at this point. And correcting some things. All right, so if we got from the eye level down is 3 units, that means that this is 3.5 units probably. Maybe it's actually more. So that would be 3, then that would be a half. That means the refrigerator would probably stop right about here, and these cabinets would go a little bit lower. So basically, I'm just using a lot of logic, as much logic as I possibly can, to help orient myself with the space based on known factors. Like, what do we know? What are some things that we do know? Well, we know the eye height. We know that the center of vision is not at the eye height. We know that the horizon is at the eye height. So I'm just doing these guesstimations and then deciding what I'm going to do from there. It's probably actually the correct height of that ceiling, but there's a tangent there. So this wall, just to add insult to injury, see this wall right here? That wall is actually behind this cabinet. See how this wall is going behind it and it's disappearing? See how this wall is going behind this cabinet and this cabinet is coming up above? Those are depth cues, and those depth cues are so important. Anyway, so so I like this. I like where it's headed now. I actually like this one the best so far. And I think that having a vertical canvas is going to lend to the height of the image very well. Right. And now on the refrigerator, it could have like some other things, like some pictures and leading lines that lead you up to the cereal box that he's really after, because he's really after this one thing up here, you know. Not that that has to exist in your images, but I'm just giving myself a narrative because it makes more sense to me that way. All right, so we're on our final sketch, and then we can begin plotting everything. All right. So let's say I just came into the kitchen and I'm looking up and over at the table. So the table has to be low enough. So if I'm 3 feet tall, that means the table has to be pretty low, right? So 3 feet is where the horizon is. So that means the table is going to be fairly low. So let's say the front of the table is right here. All right. So this will be nice because we'll be able to see this chair right here. Maybe this one as well. And then we'll be able to see the bowl and the box of Cheerios. We'll be able to see the flowers peeking up. They're behind there a little bit. Maybe the picture on the wall. Be able to see that. And then way up here is the ceiling. And then the open door would probably be right about there. All right. So maybe there's something we haven't seen before. Maybe there's a drop light here, which would be a really great pictorial device. A really heavy spotlight. Okay. Hanging from the ceiling there. So I'm just looking at going over on the Y, and maybe this thing is connected my grandmother had like this old lamp that was chains and stuff, and then we would just click it on by a little switch. So it could be like that. And if it was like that, then we would just be adding to the height of the scene, right? So let's say this is what I wanted to go for. Now I've got my object of attraction right in the middle here. I don't know, whatever that is. Whatever it is that I want, it's right in the middle. This light is super bright and it's going to be pushing its gaze right here, and so there's going to be a lot of light hitting the surface. We'll get into lights later, but essentially I think that's that'll be good like that. Or maybe, yeah, no, this will be good just like this. Perfect. All right, so I'm just imagining like when I sketch, because essentially this is the back of the table. You're gonna have to draw the back. You're gonna have to know where everything ends in order to be able to measure. Right, so we're looking up, which means that everything here is being stretched out. And it looks super wonky. And then we'll do the same thing over here. And then if I trace this back, sorry, gotta trace that back to X. That's why I was looking a little funny. All that stuff needs to go to X on the right. So actually see the top of this, see the back of that. All right, and then I think there was another chair here as well, so I'd have to change the scale a little bit. And then there's a chair over on this side. And then the wall right about there, right? And then the wall came back quite a ways. Here's where that area started. So this one goes on this side now. See how the X and the Y are now? Actually, they're almost exactly the same. It's hard, like once you get to a certain point, it's very difficult to tell which one you're going to be using. And then we got the door, and then we have this cabinet's going to be starting, so we'll probably see underneath the cabinet. And then the tabletop here. So I need to know where all this stuff is in order for me to draw it correctly in space here. So if I know how everything relates, then I know how to draw everything that's in the view. So if I can't triangulate the space back here on that wall, then it's going to be very difficult for me to put all this stuff in here. So in order for you to draw a picture like this, you need to draw enough of your holodeck in order to grid out everything that's actually going to be in the space. Anything that's not going to be in the space, you don't need to grid out. But everything that will be in the space, so if it touches the picture, that means I have to know where it fits on the ground. I have to know how high it is in the air right? So I need to know the grid on the back wall. I need to know the grid on the floor. I need to know how to triangulate how high that is in the air and how far away from the wall it is and how high this is in the picture, because this space needs to be real, and the only way we would know that that's real is by foreshortening the grid within the entire space, that as long as it touches the picture plane. Anything that is not in view, we don't have to calculate, but anything that is in view, we need to calculate. And the only way to do that is by creating the holodeck and then triangulating from there. Some of this will change, so these are just estimations, but it will change based on what you end up with, right? Based on what you desire to create. Anyway, that's part 2. I know that that one was super long. It's a very difficult thing to explain, how to create a 3D scene in 3-point perspective for the use of accurate space foreshortening, right? So in the next video, we're going to take one of these sketches. We're going to create a semi holodeck, right? So we're not going to create the whole holodeck. We're just going to create enough of the holodeck in order to measure the space that's actually in the frame. And then we're going to build in the basic shapes with regards to the visual that we sketched in here. So the visual that we sketched, we need to be fairly accurate with that. And so our estimations in our sketch, will know exactly how far off we are in our sketches once we start our holodeck. But we're going to start our holodeck based on our sketches, so everything should be fairly easy from here. The hard part is actually visualizing the space. So let's look at this again. Anything that's framed inside the cone of vision will be considered correct perspective. The smaller the frame is, the longer the lens, the less distortion we'll have. The larger the frame, so let's say we go outside of the cone of vision, the more distortion we will get, and the more we will be able to see artifacts. Now keep in mind that foreshortening space accurately outside of the triangle is very difficult. So be careful with how you frame your images, because it will start to get very difficult if you have to start gridding outside of that space. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move on to part 3. Thank you guys for watching. Hope it was helpful.